Welcome everyone to the Flowing Health podcast, and I'm really excited today to have Tracey Howes on. Tracey is a functional breathwork instructor. So welcome, Tracey.
Hi, Alessandro. It's great to be here.
Great. Thank you so much for joining. And as people know, I work with, and I've been studying Qigong for 35 years, and an important part of Qigong practice is how we breathe, and there are many different ways to breathe. But I know as a functional breathwork instructor that you have studied the science of breath, and I'm really interested to hear about the different ways of breathing and the benefits of the different ways, and also in daily life these days how it can help us for optimal health and success in life. So I think everybody would like to have some information on that. But firstly, maybe let's start with your own story, because I know you're also, you're a free diver as well, which is quite interesting, but also something maybe that happened, maybe a defining moment that took you into this world of breath work.
Well, for me, I think like most people, we didn't think about how I breathe, how, my breathing and how that impacted my body. It's just subconsciously we breathe, and therefore it often doesn't get the attention it deserves until, of course, something goes wrong. And in my case, a couple of years ago, was working, living my life, kind of no problem, sort of health issues at the time, just thinking, everything is good, and had a severe panic attack out of the blue one day, and had no idea what it was because I'd never had one before. So worst case scenario, thoughts in your head, your throat closes, you can't breathe, you think it's something wrong with your heart. Went to the doctor, and looking at the symptoms, he said, well, this is likely a panic attack, you're fine, there's nothing clinically wrong. And unfortunately, these started to happen on a regular basis over a period of about 18 months. So I knew something wasn't right, and it had a major impact on my sleep, my anxiety levels, and I just didn't understand what was going on. And I think if anybody has any kind of health issue that literally stops you in your tracks, you will do whatever you can to find a solution. And I certainly wanted to do that. And that was really the turning point for me. And that was probably about 5 years ago now.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that these days. I mean, when my daughter's 24, she often talks about, I'm getting a panic attack, or I've got anxiety. And I remember at her age, we didn't really use those words, but now people can express it, better. And I get the feeling it's also happening more with the stresses that are around for everybody in society. And so tell us, how did you sort of deal with that? Or I imagine that led you then to examining and studying the breath. And
yes, it wasn't, to be fair, my first thought, because I had no idea what the solution could possibly be. And I knew that medication wasn't something that was necessarily needed. And I was recommended to try meditation, which again was something very new to me. Of course, I'd heard of it, but I'd never practiced it. I didn't know what was involved. But at that point, I was so unwell, physically and mentally. I just thought I will do anything to feel better. So let me try this meditation practice and see, maybe this will help me. And I did a fair amount of research. Typically, that's my nature. I wanted to find out what it was all about. And I ended up doing a 10-day silent meditation retreat, which was very simply a group of people in a beautiful, very rural location, with guides helping us to meditate using breathing techniques in order to reach that meditative state. And it was so challenging, honestly. I just thought, what am I doing? I couldn't understand. I couldn't, it was just so new. And people left in the beginning part of that 10 days. They just, you could see it just wasn't for them. And I felt like I really reached a breaking point at one set. And I said to one of the guides, because we were allowed to speak for, a short period of time to our teachers every day. So I don't understand what's going on. I'm not really sure it's working. That whole feeling of expectation that there has to be an end result.
Yeah, an end goal or something.
Yeah. And you and I now, we know this is not, helpful thinking. But in that situation, that was the default. Yeah. And I persevered. But what fascinated me was within that short period of time, how much the nasal breathing technique that we used in order to calm the heart rate and go into a meditative state where you're still aware, you're not sort of on a trance or any, it's not like that. It was just calm. My sleep started to improve, and I hadn't experienced this for months. And that was just such a relief, and after I left that experience, it really profoundly impacted my thinking. I had clarity of thought. I felt less anxious, and I'd learned a tool to help me calm myself. But I think if I'd just, not had the breathing instruction, I would not have enjoyed that experience. I think it would have just been too complex, quite abstract. If you just left to your own devices, you really did need people to guide you. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, I know quite a few people who have done it. I'm still to do it myself, and I will be going at some point. But I think the one of the trickiest things is that the mind gets very busy, and my friends who did it were really tormented by their mind and their thoughts. And I know you're not allowed to engage with other people, even looking at them or engage in any way. So you're really on your own. And I think in Qigong as well, this is one of the main things, is observing the mind, that we're not our thoughts and feelings. And that takes quite a bit of practice to be the observer. And I think when you focus on the breath, as you're saying, the mind can switch off. Actually, that's one of the few ways it can switch off. And I think that's a great example. To do it for 10 days, you must have really dived in deep and then noticed the benefits, as you say.
It definitely was a commitment, but I went into that process with an open mind because nothing else was working. And it is such a personal journey, even when I talk to my clients, I don't teach meditation, to be clear, but I do help them achieve a state of mind where they can feel calm within themselves, so that they are then able to be, to make better decisions and sit with their thoughts, because that's, as you say, can be hell for some people. But I think with practice and using the breath as a tangible anchor to support that process, because we're not just talking about the mind, we're also talking about awareness of the body, how the body moves when you breathe, how the body essentially feels. And there are incredibly simple techniques that people can learn and practice over time that just increases that self-awareness, which I'm sure is very similar with Qigong.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely. At the end, maybe we can have a short practice that people can do, to integrate, or try out, So, so after the retreat, I imagine you delved into the breath, the study of the breath more deeply then.
I really wanted to understand more, about why this made such a difference for me. And I appreciate it's my personal journey and not everyone's going to have the same experience. But for me, it really triggered something in a positive way, that this is a potential solution for so many things in life. And I continued my work. I actually moved locations after I left that retreat. I made the decision to change where I live, which made a big difference to my mental well-being and physical health. And I started exploring different styles of breathing techniques because I was curious. I just wanted an understanding. And over a period of probably, let's say 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, like anything that you research, you start getting clarity of thought and things start to make sense. And I'd moved from scuba diving to free diving during this period as well, with very much a strong focus on breath control, even though different protocols for breathing for the sports performance. And I started to understand what was happening in the mind and the body through my sports training, but I wanted more information. And I eventually discovered that there was an excellent book that was recommended through the freediving community called Oxygen Advantage, which was written about breathing techniques to improve your performance. But there was so much more around general health and well-being. And like you say, I did a deep dive into it, and it answered all of my questions. I started to get the science-based research as to what was going on in the body, why the mind reacts in the way it does, why the nervous system behaves in a certain way, and how you can change your breathing, to improve your sleep, to improve your reduce anxiety, to improve any kind of performance, really. And that really opened the doors for me to really take hold of this incredible knowledge and stuff that I had experienced personally and put it together. And that during COVID, you can imagine it's a respiratory disease. People were curious. Those who knew me knew that I was on this journey and started asking for support. In other words, breathwork training. And I thought, well, I would love to be able to do this. Let me see if it's possible. And I was able to find a program that I was certified through, and I'm now an advanced instructor. And I teach functional breathing for well-being as well as for sports performance. And it just brings me great joy because I can help people on a transformative journey, but also empower them to help themselves. And I feel as though that is such an incredible gift you give yourself, because once you understand what's going on in the body, what's going on in the mind, you can use these tools and really make a difference.
And what have you noticed, like if I can call them conditions? I'm sure it helps with sleep, and I know you've got quite interesting on your website, you've got a video and a recording on how it can help sleep, but other maybe conditions that you've been able to help people with, or you've trained them to deal with?
Mm-hmm. Well, sleep is such a varied subject. I just want to talk a little bit about that for a moment, because I've had clients come to me with severe insomnia, and they've not been able to get more than 3 to 4 hours sleep a night for 2 years. And they implement these functional breathing techniques, and within a few weeks, they're getting 7 to 8 hours sleep a night.
Wow.
And even if they hadn't experienced broken sleep, they have the techniques to help them get back into their sleep cycle. Whereas before, they would have been panicking or feeling stressed and not allowing themselves to be able to move back into their sleep cycle. So that's a really good example. Snoring, another one. In some cases, we can completely eliminate snoring using breathing techniques, as well as additional tools like mouth taping. But for other people with more severe conditions, perhaps some kind of structural issue within the sinus cavity in the airways, just being able to dial down the noise, that can make a real difference to the individual and their partner who has to sleep next to them.
Yeah.
So sleep, there's a whole trajectory of different sleep disorders that breathwork can help with. But a lot of the time, clients will perhaps come to me for ways to improve management of stress. Or if they are on any kind of anxiety medication, for example, can they bring in a holistic treatment to help reduce the anxiety and perhaps their reliance on the medication that they need? Because in no way are we saying that breathwork is a supplement for medication. We're saying it's just an additional tool to support.
Mhm.
And asthma, another good example. I have clients who've been asthmatic all their lives. They may have 2 or 3 different pumps that they have to use at different times. And by implementing these techniques, they become less reliant on the pumps. Even though they still have them, that sense of taking back some control of their health is incredibly empowering. And I think for anybody in that situation, knowing that you have another tool to support you just adds so much value. You know, and then of course, sports performance. It's a whole, I'll have clients that are very much focused, whether they are ultramarathon runners or into mountaineering. I had a client swim the English Channel and climb Mount Everest. You know, they will have very specific needs for their performance, but the benefit of the breath work means that their sleep improves as well. And that always comes up, literally in every case study I've done, the sleep improves. And if you've slept well, your body's restored itself, you then have the energy, the focus, the attention that you can put onto your activities the next day. And that just improves general performance, not just the physical that is, you know, part of the brief, as it were.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No.
quite varied.
No, I think sleep is such a key, and you know, for mental health. I mean, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day. I'm reading a book on sleep at the moment, which is really interesting. You know, how we need more than we think we need, and you know, and somebody I was talking to said, oh, we need 3 hours, and I thought, no way, we need 3 hours sleep. You know, I mean, it's you know, it's quality of sleep and amount of sleep. And if we think we can do with less, which a lot of people tend to think, you know, that they can get away with it, in the end, it definitely does affect daily life and performance.
And I'm so pleased there's more information now being made available on the subject, because even for children, you know, young adults, some of my clients are the parents. I've worked with the parents, and they've approached me for working with their children, dealing with exam stress from a very young age, and actually empowering children to know and be so much more self-aware of their breathing is going to stand them in good stead as they get older and they go into the workforce. And I feel like this is an untapped area of self-development that I would love to explore further, because it definitely makes a difference to people's lives.
Yeah, well, I can see that, you know, coming to schools, for example, you know, giving talks in schools that you know, you can educate, you know, the students, the parents, the teachers on, you know, how it can help with exam stress or anxiety, or, you know, there's so much pressure in schools. And I know that mindfulness is now in schools, yoga's in schools, so they're definitely much more open. And I think it's probably, you know, breathing is even more needed, because we all do it, we all need it, and we can probably all breathe in more efficient and you know, sort of, yeah, more efficient ways.
I think with, you know, going back to why, when people say, well, if functional breathing is the right way to breathe, then what is the wrong way to breathe? You know, it's always a good place to start. And often with clients, that's where I start. You know, we will look at how poor breathing manifests in their body, because that's a way of recognizing that the breathing is actually affecting other systems. And because you're not going to sit there and go, actually, my breathing's not great today. We just don't think like that, right? Yeah. It's very much more about that self-awareness that we mentioned. Typically, mouth breathing is a bad habit. And a lot of the time people will say, well, I'm breathing in through the nose and out through my mouth. Is that okay? It's much better not to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. It's best to breathe in and out through the nose all the time. The only time you really need to breathe through your mouth is if you are training in a high intensity sport and you're going to be breathing through your mouth for a short period of time. The rest of the time, while you're awake during the day, when you're sleeping at night and when you're doing general exercise, nasal breathing is the key to functional breathing.
Mhm.
And it all comes down to a molecule that is produced in the sinus cavity that is not produced in the mouth. And this molecule is called nitric oxide. And what it does is it relaxes the blood vessels. So you actually get more oxygen-rich blood into the lungs. That's number one. Then we look at the functional movement of the body, how the body moves. Are people breathing vertically? Are their shoulders moving up and down when they breathe? Or are they breathing laterally, which is what we're aiming for, is to get you to breathe deep into the base of the lungs so the ribs expand and the diaphragm moves comfortably and there's free movement. Because years and years of bad breathing, typically people with anxiety, for example, will be upper chest breathers.
Mhm.
And what you'll notice is that, or I will notice, is the muscles of the chest, the shoulders, the neck sometimes are overdeveloped because for years and years, that's been taking up the slack because the lateral movement hasn't been happening.
Mhm.
And as soon as we shift people from that vertical to lateral, we are essentially retraining all of the respiratory muscles, the diaphragm, the intercostals, even the abdomen, the supporting structure of the body, because once those work properly, the lung function improves. And unfortunately, as we age, lung function decreases. So this is really a part of my mission, is to give people this deeper understanding of what's going on in their body so they can make these changes that become positive habits
Mhm.
that will have a brilliant knock-on effect in a good way in terms of how they feel emotionally, how their body performs physically, and how their nervous system reacts to stress.
Great. And I'm sure people probably notice results quite quickly, because if you're oxygenating the blood and improving the circulation, that's going to have a great effect, and I'm not saying it's immediate, but we're not talking about years. It's probably, weeks or days, I imagine. Yeah.
Our bodies are so remarkable. I'll be doing a simple exercise with someone and I'll say to them, just through changing your breathing, you'll notice a difference in temperature in your hands and feet. Or perhaps you have more saliva in your mouth. And this is the body adjusting to the new breathing. And they suddenly, these are things you don't naturally just are not obvious. But when you point them out and you become aware, I think there's a relief in the sense that, wow, we can have quite a quick effect. Even if you are feeling particularly stressed, and stress is not always a bad thing. I think we've tied it with this brush that you can't be stressed, it's not good for you.
Yeah.
Positive stress is very good. In fact, when you train for any kind of physical activity, that's important for the muscles to restore, recover, and improve functionality. And it's the same with breathing muscles. We're giving people ways to improve the tools that they already have. And that's when they start to feel that change, whether it's improving their sleep, being less reactive, feeling calmer, more focused, just in control. That's a very, very powerful feeling for any human being.
Yeah. And in a way, switching into that, once you teach them, I imagine people can just catch themselves holding the breath or breathing from the mouth and just catch themselves and switch back into that. Because our natural state is, young children breathe beautifully, don't they? Down in their lower abdomen, not even up here. And, when you observe them, you think, God, we used to breathe like that. And in Qigong, that's one of the things, we call it the prenatal breathing, going back to the state of the childlike state where we breathed fully deep into the lower abdomen, and that relaxes the lungs. And I imagine a lot of these muscles, even though we don't go into it in such scientific terms, but I think you're describing it, very, very well.
And children are a good place to learn from. I see especially with the younger ones, you know, when they've learned some of these breathing exercises, they'll tell the adults to watch their breathing, you know, and it's so ingrained in them. And the adults are thinking, wow, okay, I'm being observed. I need to make sure my breathing is up to speed. So I think it's not just, you know, for adults. This is, you know, we all breathe anyway. So little ones are just as, you know, interested in it, particularly if you make it a game for them, for the little ones, you know.
Yeah, and they can adapt to it, I'm sure, much more quickly, because the adults, as you said, the muscles have sort of started working in a certain way for years, and it's not that easy to change those habits. But I think children are much more curious as well, and adaptable. So maybe that's a great way to, you know, start with the kids, and they can educate us adults. Well, if you were doing talks in schools, educate the children, then they can go home and help the stressed parents.
That's 2 for 1, really.
Yeah, an army of children breathing beautifully. Yeah. So anything, maybe, I think at the moment, the way things are in society, you know, the media putting all this fear in people about, you know, bills and about, you know, recession and all this stuff. So can you show us a kind of maybe a simple breathing exercise that people can maybe switch, even if they're in the office and they're listening to this, or they're on the tube, just switch into a more efficient and you know, beneficial way of breathing?
Well, the simplest one to remember, and you can literally do this when you're driving your car, walking the dog, sitting in front of the TV, or sitting in your office, is to extend the exhale. And it helps to put a time to that, because then you can get into a rhythm. And the one that I like to share that's easy to remember is breathing in for 4 and out for 6, but making sure your mouth is closed. So it's just sitting calmly and comfortably. You want to be sitting with a straight back, shoulders relaxed. You know, you don't want to be sort of slouched over your computer, and keeping the neck open, almost like a 90-degree, you know, you can put your hand there and sort of check, so that the throat is open. And you don't even have to close your eyes, but if you want to, you can. And you can count in, as you, for example, so you'd be breathing in for 4 seconds. So you can say in your head, in 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, out 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, and repeat that. So it's a shorter inhale, a longer exhale. You know, and I have clients say to me, oh, just that short moment. I mean, think about how long it takes you to go and make a cup of coffee. You can stand up the kettle and do this. In for 4, out for 6. And by extending that exhale, you are able to shift the nervous system from fight or flight into rest and digest. If you're highly stressed or feeling very anxious, this is going to take longer. But essentially, you can shift your breathing in 90 seconds.
That's all through the nose. Yeah,
all through the nose. In for 4.
In for 4, out for 6. I was doing it. I noticed everything kind of calmed down, slowed down.
And I like to start with, you know, the simplicity really for breath work is it's very, you've got to give people an exercise or technique that is something they can put in their back pocket and take with them everywhere. There are other techniques where we incorporate breath hold. And I find with individuals that perhaps are on the panic anxiety spectrum, where they typically, that a long breath hold is going to actually trigger that for them. So they'll be more anxious or more likely to feel like they're panicking. We keep the breath holds very short. So it could be 2 to 3 seconds. Very short breath holds. And then we get them to breathe in and out through their nose very softly for 10 seconds. You know, and that's a great one for pre-sleep. So you're breathing in and you hold on the exhale. You don't hold on the inhale, because we don't want to put any stress on the upper respiratory tract at all, or on the nervous system. So something like that would look like this: mouth closed, but obviously I'm going to talk through it. Breathe in, exhale, hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe normally in and out through your nose like you breathe anyway for 10 seconds, and count for 10 seconds. And at the end of 10 seconds, you inhale, you exhale, and again you hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe normally for 10. And what that does is it's changing your breathing pattern. So if you're feeling anxious, particularly if you're going to sleep, the mind is racing, the heart rate is too high, you've probably got too much cortisol or adrenaline in the blood, and that's causing the heart rate to increase, and that's causing that feeling of anxiety. The breath hold and the normal breath for 10 seconds, repeated for 15 minutes, maybe longer, is going to shift you into the parasympathetic state. So your quiet, calm state. And as soon as that heart rate starts to come down, then the body can move into its sleep cycle. But you have to give it the chance to get there. You can't just be very anxious and then go, right, I'm going to sleep now, because that doesn't work.
No,
I know. I've tried it for years. When I was struggling, I'd be lying in bed with, checking my pulse to check my heart rate.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And now a simple tool like these, can literally help you move yourself into the right state of mind and state of your physical body, to just calm that nervous system and sleep.
Great. No, I was doing it and I could sense it as well. And it is a discipline, and it's worth it. I would recommend for everybody to have a look. We'll put the links into I notice there's quite a few links to different aspects that you offer people for, for sports, for sleep, for performance, for anxiety, stress. So we'll put those links in, and people can get in touch. I mean, the way, I always relate it to the Qigong practice, and one of the ways of starting with breathing in Qigong is often we breathe in through the nose, out from the mouth to start with, to clear a lot of the stagnation in the body, and the breath out is longer and breath in is shorter. And then as we go deeper, it's just in and out through the nose. So that it fits in with what you're saying. But often the body will naturally do that if we take the time and we're tuned in, but most people are not tuned into the body. It's like the mind and the body are trying to do different things. So this is a great discipline to count them. And actually I heard, do you know Iyengar yoga? Have you heard of this? Yeah, I saw him once give a talk in London, and I did a yoga weekend with a teacher who studied with him, and she said he could breathe out for 2 minutes and breathe in for 2 minutes at a time, and so this 10 seconds seems very short, but I know in the beginning it's a bit of a strain, because people, when they're stressed, they're holding their breath, even to breathe freely is a new discipline for many people.
Yeah, that is, and it's so powerful. And I think we've got people have got options now to really research this and understand it more. But I always say we have the power within ourselves.
Yeah.
And once you've learned a lot of these very simple techniques and you've felt the difference, then you're more likely to do it yourself, because what stops people is motivation.
Yeah.
If you are generally a very healthy individual, you don't suffer from any sleep conditions or stress, although we all have to handle stress, but let's say anxiety at worst case scenario, or panic. You think, well, actually, I don't need to change my breathing. Everything's fine, until it's not.
Yeah.
And I think the awareness of knowing how you can adapt is part of our roles, really, with what we do is just helping people to become more self-aware so that they can make change and understand the difference that it can make.
And I agree with you. I think it's also, you know, re-educating ourselves and therefore preventing these things. You know, people don't want to get to the point where they're, you know, sleeping 3 hours a night and stressed and having issues at work and drinking 10 coffees a day. You know, it's a preventative practice, you know, and I think everybody could benefit, you know, both children and adults. I think that's what's really exciting, and it's easy for people to do. So I just encourage everybody to read more about it, get in touch with you, you know, for any help they might need, and to watch some of your other podcasts or videos, because I've watched some of them and they're really good. They go deep into the science, but I didn't want to go too deep into the science, just to make it more accessible for people.
I appreciate the opportunity to share this, because I think you don't know what you don't know. And I felt so privileged really to have access to some of these trainings and the knowledge that has just opened my mind to possibilities. And I think being able to share that through my podcasts, my videos, you know, half the time it's just awareness. And then if people want more information, they can come to me, and I have programs and one-to-one support, and even do taster sessions if people are curious, they just want to get a deeper understanding. I run those every month. So yeah.
Great. I remember, maybe we can end on this note, you know, how important the breath is. My Qigong teacher saying years ago that almost all health issues come from too little oxygen in the blood. So it's our circulation, and by breathing efficiently and well, we're oxygenating the system, and we're improving the circulation. And it just makes sense. If there's more oxygen going to the cells, if we're breathing more efficiently, the whole system works better. It's not just helping sleep, it's helping digestion, it's helping emotions, it's helping elimination, it's helping being present, it's helping relationships. Actually, everything is helped by this breath, which is probably the only thing virtually we can control in the body, you know. And you know, if we're breathing efficiently, it's helping the heart and helping other things, but there's very little we can control except for the breath. And so I think it's a great tool, and I hope people will get in touch, and I really appreciate the chat today.
Thank you, Alessandro. It was my pleasure.
Yeah. So any final thoughts to share or leave people with?
Breathe less.
Yeah.
And oxygenate more.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks, Tracey, and we'll talk to you soon. And thanks everybody for listening. See you soon. Thank you.
You.
Bye.